Hi guys, it's Teresa. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing the final wrap-up of the 2010s decade. I know the December wrap-ups kind of always fly a little under the radar because people are so focused on the end of year videos, but I still wanted to do it because I read 11 books this month and they're worth talking about, even if I've already mentioned some of them in end of the year wrap-up videos. As always, we're gonna go from worst to best, and the kind of worst book, I guess, this month was Machines Like Me by Ian McEwan. It's only the worst because I DNF'd it, so it doesn't have a rating, but I've already talked about this book in my DNFs video if you missed that one. It's basically about like synthetic humans that exists, an alternate reality that exists. There's too much talk of politics in this book for me, and it just wasn't what I wanted it to be, so I didn't really feel like continuing. My officially worst book of the month was The Beautiful by Renée Ahdieh. This book is set in the 1870s. It follows this girl called Celine from France who moves to New Orleans to live in a convent because something horrible happened, and she basically, I just realized, I think in my review video for this, I'm wearing the same shirt. That's kind of scary, but basically she gets drawn into this secret society. I don't even know. There's a romance, there's paranormal creatures. It's kind of garbage. It's so poorly written. The characters are flat and unrealistic, and it's just way too like heavy-handed on the 2019 feminism. Like, honestly, this book is set in the 1870s. Please, you know, make some concessions for that, but the author didn't. She just straight up acted like all these characters were like 2019 liberals, which is just unbearable in my opinion to read about. I have a whole rant video on this book that you can go and watch right now, so yeah, for more thoughts, I will refer you to that one. I have one 2-star this month, and that is Very Nice by Marcy Dermansky. This book is kind of literary fiction, I guess. It follows this college girl who hooks up with her creative writing professor, who then kind of loses his flat and like his place to live. So he moves in with her over the summer and starts hooking up with her mom as well, and it's just such a weird story. The book is filled entirely with unlikable characters. There's so many characters, they're all connected to one another in some way, shape, or form, and they're all unlikable. Like, they're all idiots, they're all narcissistic, very selfish, very arrogant, just annoying all the way around. And at the end of the day, I just didn't see the point of this book. I think it was trying to be kind of humorous and poke fun at society, I guess, in a way, but I just, at the end of the day, I didn't care for anything that this book was doing. It's really short, but I never wanted to pick it up because I didn't care, and it didn't do anything for me, so unfortunately, I really did not enjoy this one. I have three stars this month, the first of which was Burnt by Ellen Hopkins. This is a book written in a really interesting style. As you can see, it doesn't have like normal page layout. Basically, it's kind of written like it would be poetry, but it's not. It's just normal prose, but written in this really weird format. And it honestly takes quite a while to get used to that. And then when you do get used to it, you kind of feel like, oh, what is the point of this having been written in such a weird style? Because it doesn't do anything. Like, you can just ignore it. You can just ignore it and read like a normal book, so I'm not sure what that did. This book follows this girl called Patton who grew up in a very religious family, so she's always been taught very unhealthy feelings, to have very unhealthy feelings about sex and her own sexuality. But she's a teenager, so at the beginning of the book, she starts having like sex dreams about this guy at school, and this really confuses her, and she ends up like doing some things that her parents don't approve of, so they send her off to live with her aunt in the countryside, and there she really discovers herself and her identity, I guess, apart from the religion and the strict upbringing of her family, and that there's so much more to life than living by such arbitrary rules that only make you miserable, basically. I thought for the most part the book was really well written, despite the layout, because why? I enjoyed the character's voice, I enjoyed her journey. I think she learned some very meaningful, good things throughout the book. The part I don't like is that the book ends on such a tragic note, and I honestly feel like it almost like verges on tragedy porn to do so much to a character, like to make you care about a character and then just like tear her down to such an extent. Like it was absolutely insane, and it kind of, you know, went off the deep end so quickly that I couldn't really follow entirely, like why, what is this reasoning, why, just why? And it just, I don't know, I don't like stories that are so tragic. Like I like dark stories, but there needs to be some amount of hope and light and like a positive outlook at least, but this was just depressing. So I don't love it. It's well written, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to anyone, basically. My next 3-star was The Wicked King by Holly Black, one of the most surprising books of the year because, as you might all know, I hated The Cruel Prince, but I quite enjoyed the sequel. I thought the characters developed quite a bit more. I grew into it, like the book grew into its own story and like what it was trying to do and say, and it wasn't quite so blatantly toxic anymore in all aspects. I just enjoyed it more in all respects. I don't know, I read it fairly quickly, didn't want to put it down, I just was enjoying myself, I was invested, so I ended up giving it 3 stars. And my last 3-star was Wilder Girls by Rory Power. This book is set at a boarding school where there's like all these teenage girls, and at some point a disease breaks out called the tox that essentially kills a lot of the girls and transforms others. This book also deals with a lot of body horror, so if that's not something that you're interested in or like that you can stand to read about, maybe don't pick it up. But I personally love that aspect of it. Like these girls would like grow a second spine or claws for a hand, and like it does all these weird things to their bodies, and I thought that was really fascinating. They're also quarantined from the rest of society. They sometimes get rations from the military, but that's about it. And it follows these 3 girls as they discover like more of what's actually going on, because one of them like goes missing and they try to find her and all that stuff. So I thought it was really, really, really well written. Like throughout reading this book, I loved it so much. I love the characters, I love the story. I thought it was extremely creepy, and like I just didn't want to put it down. The thing that really brought it down for me was the ending. And I know that's like most people's like dividing line is you either love the ending or you hate it. Like there's no in between, and I just hated it. I didn't think it was, you know, satisfying enough, and I didn't think some aspects of that made a whole lot of sense to begin with. And just overall, I wish that like this would at least be a sequel so that there would be like more to come, because you can't just end a book on a cliffhanger and then be like, and this is it, this is a standalone. So yeah, that was kind of frustrating and not what I wanted from it, but I still really, really enjoyed myself while reading. So if you know, find the premise interesting, I probably still recommend you to read it as well. It's just like the ending, didn't quite make it for me. Then I have 4 stars this month, which was a really pleasant surprise because I actually enjoyed so many books. The first is A Lesson in Thorns by Sierra Simone. This is an erotic romance book following 6 best friends. They've known each other from childhood, and one of them like owns this huge mansion in England, and he invites them all back to work for him. And while they're there, they discover some like ancient rituals that their parents also used to take part in when they were younger, and they kind of decide to just go with it and do it. And it all basically ends in them having like this huge orgy in the woods. And I don't know why, but like I could not put this book down. Well, I know why. The writing in this is beautiful. This is a self-published book, but it is so well written. Like honestly, better written than most other books I've ever read. I really, really enjoyed it. It's so like atmospheric and just it draws you in, like you don't want to stop reading ever because it's so good. And the character relationships are interesting and complex, and there's like a lot of stuff from their past that comes up, and it just like manages to make what could at its core just be like pure smut, like something that's actually like enjoyable, like on its literary merits as well. So I really enjoyed this one. I know a lot of people loved this one this year, and it actually just came out in 2019. I didn't even realize that, but this was great. I really enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend it. Next, I have The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. This is the final book in the Fog of the Air series. Again, very surprising to me that I enjoyed this one so much. This one actually has received kind of mixed reviews from everyone because it is very short, and I do see that that is like a point of criticism because none of the elements in it get a lot of stage time, so everything feels a little bit rushed, but I still really enjoyed it. I think I wasn't looking for like any depth, or like I had no expectations for this book, so I was just pleasantly surprised that I didn't hate it at all. This book brings the story to a conclusion that was definitely convenient but still really enjoyable. I like the characters. I just had a fun time. Like, this isn't a deep book. This isn't a book that, you know, I would ever like reread or recommend to like everyone to pick up, like it's a must read or anything like that. But it was definitely a really fun read to pick up, you know, when I just needed this kind of book in my life, and it definitely served its purpose. My next 4-star was House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig. This is a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling, and it takes the basis for the storyline, for like the fairy tale, and like takes it into a completely new direction that I hadn't seen before, and I think it did a really good job of it. This book follows 12 sisters, obviously, but unfortunately 4 of them have recently, or like over the last few years, passed away, all through like kind of mysterious circumstances, but specifically the last one, our main character is convinced wasn't actually an accident but murder, and so it kind of turns into a murder mystery. But then also they discover this like other realm where they can go to dance, and she meets this strange guy. But as the main character Annalie kind of follows the tracks of this murderer and continues to visit this other place to go dancing, she starts to question her own sanity more and more, and things start to like become really weird and stop making sense. And that's really where the book shone the brightest for me, because it did that so well. It like made me question what was real and what wasn't, and it just put such a interesting and like creepy spin on the story that I really enjoyed it. Like, it's really a dark story. It's not lighthearted in the least, and yeah, it's just gripping and fun and enjoyable, and it is a fairy tale, so it does come with some of the limitations that fairy tales usually come with. There's not a ton of world building, not a ton of time is spent kind of developing the characters and their relationships, but honestly, that kind of was part of the magic for me, because I just could let myself be drawn into the story as a whole, and I didn't have to focus on any of the specific elements too much. So for me, this was a not perfect, but close to perfect book. I really enjoyed it. It definitely was a little bit predictable towards the ending, and it didn't go quite as far as I would have liked it to, but overall I think this is definitely very skillfully written and done. I believe this is the author's debut novel, so you know, hats off to you. That was really well done for a first book. And my last 4-star is Layer of Dreams by Libba Bray. This is the second book in the Diviner series, and I read the first one in November, really enjoyed it. Also gave it 4 stars, and the second one was just as enjoyable. I love watching these characters develop on their journeys, like how they change and grow as people. I love Evie as a main character because she's such an unlikable little bitch. But I think she's just so well written as a person. She's so human and so flawed, and I just love reading about her. I just love all the characters in this. I could do without the love triangle, because Jericho can go and like, you know what I mean, but I don't want to get demonetized here. But yeah, I still really enjoyed this book. I can't wait for the conclusion of the series. It comes out like next month, so I'm gonna read the 3rd one and the 4th one like back to back. Can't wait for it. I'm so excited. But definitely highly recommend the Divina series if you somehow missed the train on that one. And then actually this month I had 1 5-star read, which is honestly at this point quite surprising to me, because I don't have that many 5 stars like ever. 5 stars is like my least frequent rating. I'm so picky with those books, so it really does mean something when I give a book a 5-star. And this one is Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. Everybody and their mother has read this. I know I'm literally the last person to do this, but here I am. I'm finally part of the club. Yay me. This book is set in a suburb, and it follows many different characters. We have this one family, the Richardsons, who are very rich, and they live in this like progressive suburb. They have 4 children called Lexi, Trent, Moody, and Izzy. They have all very different personalities, and they own like these other flats, like this, what's it called, like a house that's like 2 flats in one, and they rent out both of the flats. And in one of the flats, an artist called Mia Warren moves in with her daughter Pearl. Pearl especially is very drawn to the Richardsons, and she's like becomes best friends with Moody, and kind of all of the Richardsons' children and the whole family, like they get all tangled into one another. And there's this big controversy that's happening in the suburbs at the time that kind of splits them in 2 sides. And it's just such a wonderful story about so many interesting, complex characters. I love how the book manages to make all of them flawed and still sympathetic. Like, you think you dislike someone or you disagree with their actions, but then you get more backstory on them as a person. You realize, wait, while I don't necessarily agree with their actions now, I can understand them better. And I love that about when a book can do that, like really flip your opinion of someone in a matter of a few pages. This book is extremely skillfully written. It deals with a lot of very interesting, relevant topics, and it's just such a well-crafted character study, basically, of all of these people. They're very relatable, in a sense, problems that just make them seem like real people, and I just enjoyed every single second of this book. And that's it for all the books I read in December. I hope you guys enjoyed this little wrap up. I hope you guys had a wonderful 2019, and I hope to see you back very soon with another video. Until then, have a lovely week. Bye!